Hello and welcome to Coffee Chat. This is the next series of our protection and advocacy and self-advocacy videos. Today we have another person from PNA. Would you introduce yourself?
My name is Kevin McManus. I'm the supervisor of our information training and outreach team.
Okay, fantastic. So tell me, what is it that you do for the team?
Well, protection and advocacy is divided into three teams: adult team, children and youth team, and the team I supervise, which is, like I said, we call it ITO, our information training and outreach. And it's myself, and I supervise two non-attorney advocates, and my team is responsible for all of the intake, processing all of the intake calls, the online submissions that are seeking information or requesting assistance from protection and advocacy, making sure that those are inputted into the system and get a response from our agency to those calls, get back to them see what the issue is, and kind of go from there.
I would assume that is a very important first step in trying to receive assistance from PNA. So here we have a copy of the form, and we will show you all the form online. What I would like to do is talk a little bit about some of the important issues on this form. If you want to start out with, we have the name of the person who needs assistance. Now, sometimes it may not be the same person who's calling. Can you explain the importance of talking to the person who calls and who needs assistance?
And I will say that people can reach PNA through the phone. We have a video relay service available as well, and we have an online intake form. The information that we try to get from the callers are basically the same, whether you would call or whether you would do the online intake form. So if someone can call about themselves, they can call about a family member, a friend. We get calls from service providers calling about clients. So it's just important that the person that's calling tell us who is the individual that might be affected, that they're calling about, the situation that they're calling about, regarding that individual who that has a disability or who's deaf of hard of hearing. What is that person's issue, what is in who they are, and then it has the information that we collect about that person, and then we also collect information about the caller if they so choose to give it. I should say that all of the information is confidential, whether it's about sometimes people call and don't give us their information. They call anonymously and about somebody else, but whether it's about them or someone else they're calling about, all that information is confidential.
Okay. So can a person call and be anonymous and not give their name and talk about a different situation, and you all will handle that?
Well, that's a little bit hard to say. It depends on what they're calling about. Most calls are not anonymous. Anonymous calls, because it's important for people to understand that protection and advocacy is not adult protective services or protection and permanency. We're not first responders. We don't go out in emergency situations. So typically, if someone's calling about an issue that they're concerned about, maybe need some information about, maybe need some advice about, or maybe even need some direct representation, but it's something that would occur, later in time. So very rarely do we get anonymous calls, but if we do, we might refer them to another source depending on what they're calling about. But more often than not, we will contact the caller or the person who submits the online form. We will contact them back to follow up on their issue or concern.
Okay, I understand. You said that they can call or do an online submission, and they can call through VP relay. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that you all knew that they don't have a VP in their facility.
That's right.
But you can get a VP call. Okay. So the first thing is person's name that needs assistance. That's fine. Some of the important points on the form can be that you need to know the best mode of contact, be it text, email, VP, VRS. Am I correct?
Right. It's very important that we understand how that person wants to be communicated with. Usually when someone calls with the phone, that's their preferred mode, or online, they'll leave their email address. There's a spot for their email address, so we can respond to them via email. But yeah, because we do respond to every call that we get and every contact we get within 3 business days is our goal. It's important that we know how to best reach that person. And if they need an interpreter or some other type of accessibility to respond.
I think that's very important to bring out again, is that maybe you will have a response in 3 business days, not necessarily an emergency call. So someone calls an emergency, they're not the emergency responders. I just want to mention that again. It may take 3 business days for you to get a call back. So the other thing is, you do have a place for if the person is deaf or hard of hearing. And they can mark whether you're deaf or hard of hearing or have other disabilities. And that's a separate line, which will make it clear. Am I correct?
That's right. So obviously, many people have different disabilities or deaf or hard of hearing or both. So it just helps us get that information about that person. And then when they summarize what their issue is, whether it's on the phone or online, then we'll understand a little bit better when the advocate calls them back, to the types of questions to ask, and so we can better provide the information or advice to them.
One thing that we experience here at KCDHH is not everyone wants to provide their date of birth. I'm not sure exactly why, but the date of birth is difficult. But I understand with P&A, it's very, very important. Can you explain why the date of birth is important?
Yes, because as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we are divided into a children and youth team, which serves generally 18 and under, and an adult team that serves adults 18 and over. So the issue that the person's calling about, even though I have on my team 2 advocates, we handle the bulk of the calls, but it helps us to understand what the issue is. Sometimes it's self-evident, right, if they're calling about special education or something like that, or if they're in a nursing facility, but not always. The issues could overlap, depending. So just another piece of information that we can, when we respond, we can better respond to that person to know where needs to be assigned and the best person to respond to that call.
And then, lastly, but more importantly, what the situation is. And I know it needs to be very clear what your situation is, but some individuals have a hard time explaining that. So what kind of tips can you give someone when they're calling? What do they need to know to explain their situation?
Well, that's true. A lot of times it is difficult. Somebody might not know, they just know they need some help, but they don't know what that help might be. But generally, it doesn't, when you call initially, it is important we just get a general idea. Is it something that you're dealing with healthcare or Medicaid, or is it a school issue? Are you worried about your child receiving appropriate accommodations in school? Is there a question about your guardianship? So just enough that we know the general area of your concern. It just depends. Some people are more descriptive, but just enough that we can, when we call back, we can talk to the person and find out more about their situation.
And then refer them on to appropriate individuals.
Correct.
Kentucky Commission on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing has a card that you can put in your wallet and carry with you. It talks about P&A, their address, phone number, Human Rights Commission, and Kentucky Board of Interpreters. On the back, it indicates if you have a situation, to remember to document the name of the business, the name of the person you talked to, the date that it happened, and then explain a little bit about what happened, the name of the interpreter, if there was an interpreter that was involved. These are the types of information you need to keep, and remember, it will help your case. Would you like to add anything else?
Well, I think several things that I want to stress is that everybody who contacts P&A does receive contact back. Even if your particular issue may not fall within our agency priorities, which I think are described in some other coffee chats, we can always try to provide some information or refer to another source or provide some limited advice or advocacy about how to address that problem, explain what your rights are related to that issue that maybe somebody had not really thought about, a different way to approach the problem or the issue. And that's the important thing for our team, because 90% of the calls we receive are not going to be cases with direct advocacy at P&A, so we want to make sure that we're providing self-advocacy tools or resources that will allow people to address that issue. So we make sure that everybody gets a call back, even if it's not something that we can address as a case. That's what's important about our team.
Thank you very much for being with us here at Coffee Chat. So what you need to know is call. Let them fill out the form for you. Go online. There is a one-page tip page that explains exactly what P&A does. We'll put the link on that as well. But make your call. See if they can help you, or they will refer you. So no matter what your situation, P&A will help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.